Seismic Sisters Show. I'm Kim Christensen, your host. As we celebrate Pride Month here in San Francisco, we are honored to have a very special guest, Honey Mahogany. Honey is a trailblazing activist, community organizer, a fabulous drag queen, and the newly appointed director of San Francisco's Office of Transgender Initiatives. Honey's contributions to uplifting and empowering the LGBTQ+ community, especially trans and gender nonconforming voices, have been immense. From co-founding the historic Compton's Transgender Cultural District to serving in leadership roles with the San Francisco Democratic Party, Honey has been at the forefront of the fight for equity and inclusion. Her appointment as director of San Francisco's Office of Transgender Initiatives, OTI, comes at a critical time when trans rights are under attack across the country. As a sanctuary city, San Francisco looks to Honey's leadership to protect, and to celebrate its vibrant trans community. Let's give a warm Seismic Sisters welcome to the fierce, the fabulous Honey Mahogany. Honey, congratulations on your new role as the director of the Office of Transgender Initiatives in San Francisco. What does the appointment mean to you personally and for the San Francisco trans community?
I feel very lucky to be in this role. As someone who grew up in San Francisco, whose family came here as refugees from East Africa, it's been a real honor to be able to give back to the city that's given me so much. So I'm very excited. And also, I think that this appointment really is an acknowledgement of all the work that I've done over the years. You know, as you mentioned, I was a founder of the Trans District. I've been really involved in local activism, community development, organizing. And, I spent many years also working in the legislature, working in the Board of Supervisors and also the State Assembly. And so, I really feel like this role will benefit from and also builds on a lot of the skills and work and relationships that I've developed over the years. So it's a huge honor, and I'm very excited to give back to the city in this way.
With over 400 anti-LGBTQ+ bills introduced nationwide in the U.S. this year alone, how do you plan to ensure that San Francisco remains a sanctuary for the trans community, including those who are seeking refuge from outside the city?
That's a great question. I mean, San Francisco has been in many ways, a queer and trans mecca for the entire world. A lot of people know San Francisco because of all the incredible queer activism that has come out of here. And so we have a plethora, I should say we have a good, strong group of trans-led, trans-serving organizations and services that have been doing this work for a really long time. And most recently, just I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the city of San Francisco passed a resolution officially designating San Francisco a sanctuary city for trans people. And of course, this comes on the heel, as you said, of hundreds of pieces of legislation introduced in states across the country that look to restrict people's bodily autonomy, their access to care, their access to even reading materials and book bans and don't say gay bills. I mean, this, and also specifically targeting children, and their ability to self-identify or access care as recommended by their parents and their doctors. So we here in San Francisco are taking a stand and saying, here we celebrate everybody. We respect people's individual personal rights and rights to control over their own bodies. And we celebrate gender diversity because, we have been at the forefront of so many civil rights movements, and we know the benefits and the results of embracing diversity and fighting for equal rights. San Francisco has been a bastion for, I think, progressive politics for a very, very long time and will continue to be. But so in terms of what we are doing to actually ensure that it's not just, a piece of legislation or nice words that we're passing saying that we're a sanctuary city, currently the city is working on several initiatives. Mayor London Breed, I think, has made some significant investments for the trans community. And also, one of her initiatives is ending trans homelessness. So She's committed to really investing in culturally competent and specific services that help to reduce the disparities that trans people face when it comes to homelessness. Here in San Francisco, we know that 40% of our homeless youth identify as LGBTQ. And that is because, of course, again, we are seen as a queer sanctuary. And so people who are fleeing unaccepting homes, who are kicked out of their homes, even from other places in California, oftentimes come to San Francisco. I mean, to make it personal, that certainly was the case with my partner, who was, kicked out of his home at the age of 16 in San Francisco to just to live his truth. And so we want to make sure that when those kids come here or when adults come here from other parts of the country, especially places like, Tennessee or, the Dakotas or, places where I would say people maybe aren't used to the living expenses that we have here in San Francisco. It's quite a shock. We want to make sure that when those people come here, that they have a soft landing, because these are folks, again, who are fighting for their lives, fighting for their freedom, coming here with nothing but the clothes on their backs. And it benefits not just them, but the city, to ensure that when people come here, that they don't just end up on the streets, that there is a welcoming place for them to go, and that we're helping to empower them and support them towards independence. So, again, we have increased the number of rental subsidies that we are able to give out within the community. We've increased access to healthcare and services and social workers and support services of all kinds, so that people can, transition towards independence, and so that we can help deal with the increase in demand that we have seen since the introduction of these, Byzantine laws.
Oh, thank you for explaining that. So it sounds like the Office of Transgender Initiatives has one of the main focuses is ending trans homelessness. So thank you for explaining that and why it is so critical.
Yeah, I mean, that's one piece of work that we do. I mean, we certainly do many other things. I mean, besides doing a lot of sort of advocacy around the budget and how it impacts trans communities, which we're currently doing right now because it's budget season. We also do trainings with a lot of different city departments around cultural competency, because the city the city hires so many people. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people as a part of the city workforce, and we're hiring people every day. And it's important that we provide a supportive work environment for all types of people. So we want to make sure that there's that employees understand, because a lot of the, I think, discrimination that people face, regardless of their identity, comes from ignorance, people not knowing how to do better, or maybe people feeling uncomfortable about asking questions. And so, part of our job is to create a safe space where we can talk about these things and answer people's questions and give people best practices and help people work through some of their discomfort, because, they don't know. They've maybe never met a trans person that they know of, or they've never, and similarly to some people may not have ever met someone who was Muslim, or someone who was, an immigrant from an Asian country, or whatever it might be, So we are very focused on ensuring that as a city, that we're giving people the tools that they need in order to feel comfortable and be, allies and work alongside trans people. We've also done work around bathroom access. That has been a huge issue. Certainly, again, like that is another thing that people in some states are trying to legislate against, and it's always very confusing to me, because they want to demand that people use the bathroom that aligns with the gender that folks were assigned at birth. I mean, I don't know that people, like a man, would want to see me in a men's bathroom. Like, I feel like that would make them very uncomfortable. It would certainly make me very uncomfortable. And so I think that is in and of itself ridiculous. But also just acknowledging that everybody needs to use the restroom, and that, for some people, regardless if they're trans or if there are other issues, having gender neutral bathrooms makes sense. I mean, in some ways we already do this, right? And people are freaked out about this. I'm like, we have family bathrooms
Right.
and things work out fine because sometimes a dad needs to take their child into a bathroom that has like, access to, a changing station or whatever, or maybe a dad and a mom need to go in together so that they can manage their kids. Like, uh, we have gender neutral bathroom spaces, and so we the city has committed to, with every city building, making sure that there is access to gender neutral bathrooms, which does help the trans community. But it's not just helping the trans community, it's also helping families and other folks. I think that's actually true for a lot of the advocacy that trans folks do. When we advocate for access to healthcare and services and gender affirming care, that doesn't just influence trans or benefit trans people. It definitely benefits cis people as well, because what we're talking about is bodily autonomy. What we're talking about is health and mental health, and all of these things that, again, our wins are actually helping not just trans people but also cis people. And I know I'm talking a lot, so apologies, but there's some really good examples of how, on the opposite end of the spectrum, these attacks on the trans community are not just hurting the trans community, they're also hurting cisgender people. There was someone who was murdered, I think, a few months ago, who, the person who killed her was upset because he said that he hated, transgender people, and so he ended up killing her. Well, she wasn't trans. She was a cisgender woman. She was, assigned female at birth. She was a woman, and she just didn't fit. He thought she looked trans, and so he killed her. So again, these issues don't just impact the trans community. It's sort of a broader conversation about, gender policing and, who has the right to be in spaces. And if you don't fit or look a certain way, then, we have the right to kill you. Like, that's not okay. It's unacceptable. And that's what we're fighting against.
Honey Mahogany, you have worn many hats, from social worker to a drag performer to political leader. So how do these different experiences shape your approach as an activist fighting for trans rights?
That's a great question. I mean, I think, I am somebody who just can't help themselves in terms of staying busy. And I always try and take things off my plate and then add, like, I take one thing off my plate and I add two more. And I think I don't know if it's something that where I get bored easily, or if I just have a lot of different interests, but like, I have gone through periods where I, have worked, predominantly as a performer, and then just felt like something was missing. And like, that brought me back to sort of social work and advocacy. And I've been in places or periods in my life where I've been so consumed by, working in, the legislature's office and all the work that we've had to do, and really found myself missing, working again, like performing, or like, being able to express myself in other ways. So I feel like it's really important for me personally to exercise all these different parts of myself and who I am. I don't think I can pick between, Honey Mahogany, the performer, and Honey Mahogany, the activist, and Honey Mahogany, the, the social worker. These are all really integral parts of my identity. And I really actually think that they're not all that disconnected. And I don't know if it's because, I don't think it's just because I, like all of these things and try and bring my full self to whatever space I'm in. But, I do think that there are elements of, like, performance art is brought into politics, and I also think that there is, lessons to be learned from organizing and activism that can enter the performance art world. And, and certainly, the type of art and performance that I like to do is really informed by, I think, what's happening in the world, and, some of the most pressing issues that I'm experiencing. It's sort of a way for me to talk about that in a different way. So there's been a lot of overlap, and I think I have felt very lucky to be able to sort of blur the lines between those worlds, and it's really allowed me, I think, to bring my whole self to work every day.
Well, honey, let's go ahead and talk about your time on RuPaul's Drag Race. That was back in 2013. How did being in the spotlight on that platform impact your activism and advocacy work? Sort of similar to what we just talked about.
I think that RuPaul's Drag Race definitely gave me a little bit of a bump and a platform to be able to launch off of. I think, in my work, I often talk about privilege and what that looks like. And I think everyone has, certain privileges or certain, skills or things that they can bring to the table. And I think for me personally, I feel like it's, my duty to use those skills, those privileges, those platforms to do good. And to give back. And so I was really able to, I think, use that platform that, RuPaul's Drag Race was able to give me to sort of redirect. I chose not to sort of really throw myself further into the sort of the RuPaul's Drag Race world and the reality TV world, and to sort of, make a little bit of a left turn and, use that as a platform to fight for social justice and to organize within my community and create change. And it's been I don't know, I can't really quantify like how much did it help, how much did it hurt, or whatever. I don't know if there's a way for me to do that, go back in time and do that math without like reliving my life. But I will say that certainly it's given me a little bit more of a social media presence. I will say that it is ironic because I remember when I went on RuPaul's Drag Race, I was on the 5th season, and I kind of felt at the time, I was like, well, I don't know how long this reality TV show is going to be around. I feel like it can be going downhill. So let me just get in there soon, like as soon as possible, so that I can, be on the show and then sort of launch my career from there. And, at the time, like, getting 50,000 or 100,000 followers was like huge, and it was like amazing. And now, of course, these queens get on the show and immediately like 400,000 followers, 500,000 followers, 1 million followers. Like it's a totally different ballgame now. So, had I gone on there, I think more recently and now, like I would have even gotten a bigger, bump. And I think, been able to, it would have helped amplify my voice even more. So, but I do believe that things happen for a reason. And I think I got in there at the right time, and that it sort of, allowed me to sort of find myself within San Francisco's, socio-political scene. And really, I think it was meant to be. And I think I ended up just where I'm supposed to be. And I'm really grateful again for the opportunity to be doing the work that I do every day.
Absolutely. Well, San Francisco's mayor's race is heating up. And in fact, we heard your name mentioned at one of the recent mayoral debates. What kind of leader do you think the city needs to truly live up to its values, San Francisco's values of inclusion and equity for the LGBTQ plus community?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that San Francisco definitely needs a mayor that is going to be willing to let me back up and say this. San Francisco politics is not a joke. It is a brutal. It is maybe because it's a small city, but it's not just a small city. It's the most densely populated city outside of New York in the country. It is also a city and county in one. And so that puts a lot of power in our city government because it's not just a city council, it's also a board of supervisors. And those people hold a lot of power. And it's also a very strong mayor city. Our mayor has a lot of power and control over city departments, et cetera. And so, a lot of other cities would give some of the mayor's powers that currently exist here in San Francisco to an administrator. So it's a tremendously, a city that has a lot of political power, and not just locally, but also on the national stage. I mean, just a couple of years ago, it was really incredible to see the president's, the president addressing the nation, and having Nancy Pelosi sitting there as Speaker of the House, having Kamala Harris, who was a district attorney here in San Francisco and a senator, then being vice president. I mean, and then Dianne Feinstein, of course, was alive at that time as well and held some very powerful positions in those Senate committees. So San Francisco has had a huge, and specifically San Francisco women have had a huge influence on our federal government, and so the politics in San Francisco have always been cutthroat and brutal, and it has been. And so it has been described as a knife fight in a phone booth. It is not for the weak of heart, and it is certainly feels like warfare at all times. That being said, I think that there can be a lot of political factionism and some grudges that are held. But I think whoever is mayor really has to put all that pettiness, all that craziness aside, and really focus on what's best for the city. And we need somebody who is willing to work with people from all political spectrums, somebody who is not just talented, but also somebody who knows what they're doing, especially right now as the city is struggling to recover from, the COVID-19 pandemic. We were one of the first cities to really shut down, and we stayed closed down, some of the longest times. And who knows whether that was the right response or not. I do believe that it ended up saving a lot of people's lives, regardless of, how people, may feel looking back on it, hindsight is always 2020, but I think that we erred on the side of saving people's lives, and I think that we accomplished that. As we come out of that, as we recover, it's really important to have somebody in there who knows what they're doing, who understands the city's history, the dynamics of the city's economy, and who can be both a strong leader and be someone who is collaborative. So those are the things that I'm certainly looking for. Additionally, I'm looking for someone with a nuanced understanding of policy, somebody who is going to be very committed, I think, to addressing some of the most pressing issues, which of course, homelessness, addiction, but also housing and the city's economy, specifically our downtown economy, right? I want a mayor who's going to be creative about creating solutions, who is going to think about all the ways in which we can say yes versus saying no, and obviously, additionally, this person, it being San Francisco, needs to resonate with the people and represent the people. So, it's a tall order, but I'm hopeful that we will be able to elect a mayor who's up to the task.
So you mentioned the city's economic recovery, and we know it's important to bring back conventions and tourism and nightlife, arts and culture. I've heard that you are now one of the co-owners of the Stud, which is a recently reopened and historic LGBTQ nightlife spot. Can you tell me why preserving queer spaces like this is so vital, especially now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I became an owner of the Stud back in 2016 when the Stud was first threatened with closure. A group of friends of mine got together and formed a collective. We became, I believe, the first collective LGBTQ nightlife venue in the country. That experience is what sort of led me to get much more involved in local politics and also to found the Transgender district. It was really around protecting not just queer spaces, but also queer communities from the impacts of, gentrification, the rising costs of living. So many of my friends were being forced out of the city, and we were seeing the closure of so many historic LGBTQ spaces, especially women's spaces. Queer women, at one point, there really weren't any queer women's spaces in San Francisco that were left. And so, it became really important for me to sort of change that narrative and fight back against that. And I also want to be very clear that it's not about fighting against change or fighting it against, San Francisco is a very dynamic city, and hopefully it continues to be that way. I think that's a part of the city's ethos. The emblem, this, the city's emblem is the phoenix. So certainly San Francisco has literally risen from the ashes time and again. Whether it be earthquakes or fires or even the booms and busts of the gold rush and the .com, and now the more recent sort of COVID pandemic. We are a city that has been able to come back time and again. And we've done that through innovation, through change, but somehow still keeping, I think, the ethos of this city alive and well, which is, a place that welcomes artists and people who think outside of the box, and people who are sometimes on the fringe and who can bring really a unique perspective, but also helps San Francisco maintain its diversity and its, ensure that we remain a world-class city where people come to be inspired, to find themselves. And in order to do that, we need to have a thriving arts and culture scene. And I actually find that, to me, the most interesting parts of San Francisco's history are the times in which we have faced a sort of recession, right? I mean, it was sort of the white flight that happened, in the 50s, that sort of led to the Castro becoming a LGBTQ neighborhood and becoming this huge beacon for the LGBTQ community. Without that, gay men and queer people would not have been able to move into those fancy Noe Valley Victorians, right? They would still be filled with predominantly like Irish and Swedish families. So change is not necessarily bad, but I think for me, it's always been really important to think about how we don't just push people out. I think that's where the issue is. We saw that with the redevelopment in the Fillmore. We've seen that, and it's been a narrative, for the past couple of decades, that like we're losing our Black population. San Francisco used to be, I think, at some point up to like 15 or 20% of African American, and now it's down to somewhere like 3 to 5%. So we just want to make sure that San Francisco doesn't lose its flavor, that we are not pushing out the very people that have made San Francisco special, and not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because I think that will have a direct impact on the city's economy, its longevity, and whether or not it's a place that people want to live and be. So that's always been at the forefront of my mind.
Well, as we close out Pride Month, what message do you have for trans youth, specifically struggling with their identity or facing discrimination?
I've been really inspired by our youth. The youth have always been at the forefront of every civil rights movement. And, right now is no different. It's just really unfortunate that youth also are being targeted, specifically by, bullies in state legislatures across the country who are trying to scapegoat our community. But my message to youth will be that, you have some incredible people that are fighting for you every single day. I personally continue to be inspired by the activism of our young people. And, I encourage them to keep going, and that things absolutely do get better. I know that things are hard right now. Things are looking bleak, but, they always say, it's always darkest before dawn. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep our hope, and just know that, you can always come to San Francisco, and we will, I'll be fighting to make sure that, you are taken care of. So hang in there. And also thank you.
So looking ahead, what gives you hope in the continued fight for trans liberation and equality under the law?
What gives me hope? That's a great question. I mean, I continue to be inspired by our young people. I continue to be inspired by the number of community members who are getting involved, who are fighting back, who are realizing that we have to build a bigger tent, and organizing across diverse communities to build solidarity. And I'm also really inspired by the leadership here in San Francisco, of the Board of Supervisors creating a sanctuary city for trans people, all the work that our office has done, and will continue to do to fight for equity here in San Francisco. And, just really hoping that in many ways, San Francisco can be a beacon and a model for other cities to follow. I think, you know, hate and scapegoating and this sort of culture war is burning really bright right now. But I think, the brighter it burns, hopefully, I'm really hoping the faster it sort of burns out. And I think that, empty promises and threats and sort of this, again, sort of scapegoating and riling up of the base that the right is doing right now, I hope it can only last so long before people realize that, it's all kind of, smoke and mirrors. And, I've been really, really hopeful that our justice system will continue to hold people accountable, that we will, and that will help wake people up. I mean, certainly, you know, that is what happened during Nixon's presidency a bit. I think there were a lot of people that supported him till the end, and then he finally, admitted it, that he had engaged in those behaviors, and all of a sudden people were sort of shocked and realized what a mistake they had made. Granted, I do think that part of the reason that this is happening now is because certain people in a room sat down together, and I know I'm probably going to I'm going down a total a foxhole here, but people sat in a room together and decided they would never allow that to happen again, right? That they would never allow, what happened to Nixon to happen again. But I think that, again, our country has a lot of has survived a lot. We have some guardrails on the system that have been holding up, and I hope they continue to hold up. And eventually, I hope the, American people will see that, we should not be. We can have political differences. We can have come from different perspectives, have different ideologies, different religions, all of these things. But at the end of the day, we have to come together and do what's best for the country, and uphold this country's values, which are for individual freedom, equal rights, and the right to sort of make your own decisions about your life and your body and your children. So hopefully I'm hopeful that we'll get there.
Thank you so much. So here's our final question, honey. When can we expect to see Honey Mahogany slay on the main stage again soon? Seismic Sisters needs to get our tickets.
Well, that's a great question. So I have in addition to the other things that I do, I have a new metal group called Commando, and we have been performing sort of all over the country. We played at South by Southwest a couple of years ago. We opened for Big Frida down in Los Angeles for the film festival down there, and just most recently, my band played at the Ivy Room in Oakland. We've played the Independent here locally, etc. We're next scheduled to perform at on the main stage at SF Pride. And, we have a couple other gigs coming up soon. So if you're going to see me perform, it'll probably and hopefully be with my band. They're a lot of fun. It's all, we're all queer and trans led. Some amazing vocalists from historic queer bands throughout history, including Juba Kalamka, Lenny Breedlove, and also sort of the younger, newer folks who are equally fierce, Drew Ariel Sands from Los Angeles, and then myself are the singers. And we've got an incredible band that is just we have so much fun. So hopefully y'all will get to see us soon. If not at the main stage at Pride, then maybe at an upcoming show.
What's the band's name again?
It's called Commando. It's a little bit, there's a lot of bands called Commando, so you might have to do a little bit of a deep dive. But, we have a self-titled album that we released 2 years ago, I think now. One song that I wrote and I'm lead on is called What It Feels Like for a T-Girl. So if you can't find Commando, look up Commando T-Girl, and usually my song will come up, and then you can sort of see sort of some of the music that's on there. And again, it's not just me singing on it. We have a group of 4 or 5 singers who cycle through the band and who also perform together. And there's some really great fun music. And new metal, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the genre, it is metal music, but it's got a lot of influences of hip hop and punk in there, so it's I feel like it's more listenable than sort of like heavy metal, but it's still very much rock and roll.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out. It sounds fun. Thank you so much. What a powerful and insightful conversation with the fabulous Honey Mahogany. Her journey reminds us why pride is so vital for the LGBTQIA+ community to be seen, heard, and celebrated with 100% authenticity. As we continue amplifying diverse voices and stories, be sure to subscribe to the Seismic Sisters YouTube channel for more informative feminist content exploring the intersections of gender, sexuality, race, and activism. Thanks for joining us, Honey Mahogany. I'm Kim Christensen. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Seismic Sisters Show.